Hi everyone, my name is Rita Michelle and welcome to yet another beautiful day that God has blessed us with. Today I wanted to discuss the book of Jonah, specifically Jonah 1. In here it talks about Nineveh and how God asked Jonah to do certain things. So I just jotted down some notes that I took earlier while I was reading the book of Jonah. And it just gives a little bit of a background and some of the thoughts that came to mind while I was reading. So Nineveh is a city spoken about in the book of Nahum. This is another book of the Bible, and I suggest that you read it just so you can get a little bit of background knowledge. But this city did evil in the sight of the Lord and was known for their power and wickedness. Just as God asked us as set apart believers to warn those of his coming judgment, he asked the same of Jonah back then. Remember, God is a loving and just God, so he gives us warnings and times to get right with him before he judges us for our wrongdoing. Much like our parents who warn us not to do things lest we be punished, he is the same way and does not seek to condemn us without first warning us of the consequences. So, in chapter 1, it talks about how Jonah actually was asked by the Lord, and I'm going to read a little bit for you now. Starting at verse 2, it says, "Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." But Jonah arose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid the fare and went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So as you can see, Jonah was disobedient whenever he was asked by God to go out and warn the city of Nineveh not to continue doing wickedness and evil. And unfortunately, because of that, God was like, all right, like, if you're not going to listen, I'm going to create a whole scenario from this. And I'm also going to make sure that others learn from it as well. It's not just Jonah who's learning in this chapter, it's actually more people, which I thought was really cool. So, what ends up happening is Jonah gets that ticket to go to Tarshish so that he doesn't have to go to Nineveh. He's just like, I'm not going to go over there. I'm fearful of what is going to happen if I go and try to speak before this powerful and wicked nation. So I'm not going to go and do it. So when he did that, he ended up going on the ship. God allowed him to get on there. But there are other men who are also on the ship. And when he got on and they're on their way there, they ended up running into a really bad storm that was going on and making the water really rough on the seas. And if you've ever been on a boat and just had like a little bit of seasickness or a little bit of, the boat was rocking a little bit too much, I personally have, like on a cruise ship and even on just a regular boat. And it's not fun because you start feeling dizzy, you start feeling like, okay, like, is this going to break apart? Especially if you're on one of those small boats, because you don't want to end up sinking. And if you're not a strong swimmer, especially in the middle of the sea, there's just so many different things that could happen. So these men were fearful, of course, like with the raging waters and all of the things that could happen. Even they just said, you know what, like maybe if we lighten the load on the ship, we'll be able to keep going and make it over to the shore. So they started throwing things off the ship, which for me, I feel like this is almost like sacrifices. They're just like, okay, like I'm gonna sacrifice if we relate it to today. So, for example, if you are trying to get your degree in something, you're going to sacrifice time, you're going to sacrifice your social life, you're going to sacrifice money, and all those things are going to lighten your load so that you can commit your time, your energy, your money, and all of that to getting your degree so that you can invest in your future and make everything better for you when you get to that destination and you get to that goal. So I feel like this is kind of symbolic of what they're doing here. But what they ended up finding out is that Jonah was a Hebrew because they went and they casted lots. And back then, it was basically like a superstitious way of finding out, like, who is to blame for this or who is guilty of this crime. So they casted lots, and somehow it worked out and it landed on Jonah. They asked him, like, all right, like, how did you cause all this? Why are you here? Why are we going through all this trouble? And Jonah admits to them, I'm a Hebrew man. I disobeyed my God. And this is why we're going through all this trouble. Which is funny because he was already aware that This is the reason why they're going through all of the rough seas and they weren't able to make it to the city that they planned as their destination. So not only did Jonah's disobedience bring danger upon himself, but it brought danger upon other people. Now, if you sit and think about it, if we're ever disobedient, just think about like a small thing. Say your parents tell you whenever you're playing outside, don't run into the street, right? As young children, we just think like, oh, the world is our playground. Like, there's all these things we can get into. We can like run everywhere, do everything. Why can't I run across the street and play and try to get into that street? Or why can't I go over to my neighbor's house over there? But what we as young minded children don't realize is that if we run out to the street not looking both ways or not checking to see if there's a car or just anything that can be coming by, we might end up getting hit and then that injures us or kills us. And that's what our parents are trying to prevent. And so, say we have a younger sibling who is looking up to us, trying to learn from us, because obviously, like, we kind of all have those younger siblings or somebody who's younger in our life that looks up to us and says, okay, like, I'm going to mimic what you do so I can figure out life together with you. And they're looking at you and you decide, I'm going to disobey. So I'm going to run out in the street anyway. But you, a little bit older, know, like, all right, I need to look both ways before I run out into the street just to make sure that there's no car, no motorcycle, or whatever. There's nothing coming that could possibly harm me. But your younger sibling, they haven't caught on to that just yet. So they end up saying, okay, I saw my older brother or my older sister running out into the street, then that means I can disobey mommy and daddy. Like, nothing happened when they did it, so nothing's gonna happen when I do it. And then, say in the future, unfortunately, they run out into the street, they're not aware that they need to be looking both ways. They think, oh, this car is gonna stop. The car driver wasn't paying attention and then hit that sibling. So then we see how, like, just that one act of disobedience can lead to all these things that are very unfortunate events and something that we are definitely trying to prevent. And this is what God was trying to prevent. It's just the same thing. Like, Jonah did that one thing that caused danger to others. So they asked him, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to get to the other side? And he was just like, you know what? Like, honestly, you guys are going to have to throw me overboard. Like, that's the only way. Remove me from your life, remove the trouble, and you guys will be able to have smooth sailing for the rest of the way. And they're just like, well, that, like any human would be like, well, that's weird. Like, I wouldn't want to just throw somebody out into the ocean. But they ended up doing it. Once they threw Jonah out of the ship, they're able to have smooth sailing on their way to Tarshish. Keep on doing what they're doing. Because remember, God didn't command the people on the ship to go and warn Nineveh. He had commanded Jonah to warn Nineveh. So all of this, that had nothing to do with them. But the thing that I thought was so beautiful is what I'm going to read in verses 14 through 16. Therefore they cried out to the Lord and said, we pray, O Lord, please do not let us perish for this man's life, and do not charge us with innocent blood. For you, O Lord, have done as it pleased you. So they picked up Jonah and threw him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. Then the men feared the Lord exceedingly, and offered a sacrifice to the Lord, and took vows. So in verses 14 through 16, you guys saw how, despite Jonah's disobedience, even the men who were on the ship, they became God-fearing. And they ended up saying, you know what, like, they didn't even know who God was, but they still said, I'm going to pray to God and I'm going to serve you. Because if you are powerful enough to do all of this and then spare us after we are obedient to what you have asked us to do, then that means you are the almighty powerful God and we should be serving you. And I just thought that was so amazing. Like, it just took this one act of disobedience and it turned it into something that ended up getting more people to commit their life to God and to serve Him. So that's one thing that I wanted to speak about, because last week when I told you that certain things are happening for God's glory and for our good, this is a key example right here. even though these men had no idea that Jonah was going to be getting onto the ship and that he was disobedient to God, they ended up committing their lives to God, and that gave God glory. And they also ended up being spared, and as it says, the sea ceased from its raging. So they were able to make it safely to their destination, have more time to be alive on the earth. And who knows, like they probably even just told other people about what happened, and that could have spiraled into a certain number of events. So even though Jonah was trying not to warn Nineveh of their wicked ways, he ended up warning other people in the same act. So I just wanted you guys to know that, because I know every time people think of the book of Jonah, most people are probably thinking, oh yeah, that's the guy who ended up getting swallowed up by the whale. But you have to know the background to it and how it ended up getting to that point where he did get swallowed by the whale. Because I just feel like as I've read the Bible more and more, I've learned more and more about how different verses can be interpreted. And there's literally, like in every scripture, there's something that you can learn from it and use as either a word of encouragement or something that, like if you're struggling with a certain thing in your life, you can go back and say, oh, like I may have read this or have been taught it this way back in the day, but now, whenever I'm reading it, I can see that this is something that I can apply to my life, and this is not the part of the book or the story that I'm normally exposed to. So I just wanted you guys to really just sit and think about that a little bit, because there may be things going on in your life that you may have been disobedient of in the past, and God already has a plan for that situation. And you may be thinking back, like, oh yeah, I was disobedient in this area of my life, but then God did this, and that totally changed things around. And it may not have just changed things around in your life, but it probably could have changed things around in somebody else's life. You may be using that very thing as a testimony for people now that are just allowing them to be delivered from some of the things that they're going through. So, like I said, everything happens for a reason, and it's for God's glory and for our good. So if you guys have anything that you wanted to share in the comments, please feel free to comment below. Just make this a safe community where we can discuss different testimonies and encourage each other, because like I said before, we are going through a crazy time right now. I'm actually recording this video on Saturday, October 31st, so that it can be released next Saturday. And I don't know what is going to be going on this coming weekend, because as we know, November 3rd is going to be our election in America for the president. And I'm not really sure what's going to go down, because so many people are making claims that there's going to be a civil war, or it's just going to be like outright chaos that is just going to be going on due to the election results, whether it's one candidate or another. So I just pray that everybody is going to be safe. Everybody just hold on to the things that you truly value, and make sure that whatever you're doing, this is something that's ordained by God. Whatever you say, it's also ordained by God. Any thoughts, actions, and words that come out of your mouth, make sure that it's not something that comes from a worldly or human emotional perspective, but it's something that is coming from God. Like, don't feed into the negativity, don't feed into things that can cause fear and things that can cause hatred or anger or anything that is against God. So, like I said, I just pray that everybody remains safe during all the things that may be coming or the things that are going on right now. And you all take care, and I'll see you in the next one.